humbled to be joined by Elvis Costello for a bit of a chat. Welcome to Melbourne.
Thank you.
I know you've got your young twin boys with you. How are they finding the temperature?
They're loving everything about Australia.
Right.
They're having a really great time.
One of the things that John and I commented on about reading your book, I can't say that I've read it all, it's a very large book, but one of the things that strikes me is your vivid memories of your youth. I wonder whether that's linked to your creativity, that you remember so much detail of your youth. I could probably commit my youth to 3/4 of an A4 page. How do you do it?
I do have you can imagine if I can remember my songs.
Yeah.
It's a lucky thing to have a memory like that, and I chose this moment to get it down on the page while it's all sort of still in my head. Maybe I won't always be so lucky. You don't know as time goes on.
Because you never kept journals or a diary, did you? So
no,
this has all just come out.
Yeah, but that's why I wrote it in the order I did. I didn't make it into a reference book with an index, and I didn't say I was born and then it goes logically through. The music is really the linking aspect. So the music is connected to memory, and therefore, a song will remind me of where I heard it first, what I felt about it, or where the idea for songs that I wrote 20 years, 30 years later originated. The type of music I was introduced to as a child.
Yeah.
And how it works on the imagination. When you're a little kid, you look at the covers of records as I did, and it shows a life, that you wonder whether you'll ever be part of. Grown-up music, and then you live that life, and then you know what it feels like.
So nature versus nurture. Would you have gone on to your career had your father been an accountant?
Well, my wife's father was an accountant,
right?
So that's your answer right there. My other grandfather was a gas main layer and a foreman for 40 years. So I think hard work comes in different forms.
What's it like writing your autobiography? Do you discover things about yourself?
Yeah, I didn't really think I was writing an autobiography, which I think is usually more formally organised. I just thought I was writing a memoir, connecting up.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that are left out. I don't write about some records in any detail at all. Some I don't mention. There's whole periods of my life that are not written about in great detail, because it didn't feel that I didn't want to have anything to say about it. So I don't know that it obviously feels the way it did to finish it. I'm shocked that people have read it so quickly, because when you spend a long time, longer than I care to admit, living it, and then you spend a little time thinking about what it should be in a book form, and then write it down. I didn't imagine everybody would read it the first week it came out.
Paul McCartney. I've got this quote of his in my head, which may turn out to be absolute bulltish, but I thought that he once said that lyrics account for about 5% of any song. I take it that's a view you wouldn't share.
Well, I would never argue with anything Paul says, but I don't think that's necessary. For me, not true. I don't know. Some songs are obviously led by the words, others less so,
Oliver's Army's not going to be successful if it's about washing powder, is it?
I don't suppose so. Well, I don't know that what it was about was really what made it a hit. I think it's the other way around. Sometimes you smuggle an idea onto the radio or onto a record even with a good tune and a striking piece of music, whether it's a ballad or a bright pop song like that. And then people latterly discover what you're singing about, you know? Sometimes you can match the words exactly with the ferocity of the music, and other times you'd be a little bit more tricksy about it and let people be singing it before they realise what it is they're singing it. Yeah.
I read that you wrote Oliver's Army on a plane after you left Belfast, and you were moved by what you saw in Belfast. It's really a protest song, isn't it?
Well, I think I've always had, if you read the book, you'll read my family history, at least on one side of my family, comes out of Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, the island of Ireland. My great-grandfather was what you would call now an economic migrant. They didn't have fancy words for it then in Victorian times, but came post.
That's what the Irish used to export was people.
Yeah, it sort of came after the famine, to make a better life. And looking at the records of what happened to the family on Merseyside, it wasn't much better a life, but perhaps better than he would have enjoyed back home.
Is that
so
why
you see that process, and then you go back there later as an adult and you see, well, here's a bunch of people who should be on the same side that are placed in opposition, whatever beliefs lay behind all these conflicts. Put those aside and just look at them as people. That's what kind of upset me.
Yeah. Is that why you have such a rapport with Paul McCartney, that you both sort of have a bit of an Irish background to you, and a similar feel towards Ireland?
Well, I mean, Paul wrote one particular song that made that point. I don't think he's been that strident in his identification with Ireland. He is Sir Paul McCartney when all said and done, you know. How he isn't Lord McCartney, I have, and there's Lloyd Lord Webber. I don't know. There's something wrong with the universe, you know.
Where's Sir Keith Richards too?
Well, quite. But I think it'll be a cold day in hell before they have me in there. But no, I mean, I no. Obviously, Paul made note of the fact when we worked together that we had this, you know, Liverpool Irish background as he saw it. My dad's actually from Birkenhead, the other side of the Mersey. My mother doesn't have any Irish in her at all, you know. So, but it was something that the initial connections, and both fathers being musicians, and you know. We nearly, you know, we had a group for one afternoon called the Plastic Macs.
Is that right?
Just one afternoon.
Are you ever going to do another album, do you think?
I don't know.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I mean, Paul's moving forward all the time, doing this, that, and the other, you know. And of course, his repertoire is so huge. You know, when you go to his concerts, you think, well, he can't have any more songs, and then he'll come out and do 5 like incredibly well-known songs that you've forgotten that have a place in that show. So it's not like he really needs to write any more with me. But we wrote some pretty good ones. You know, there's even a few. I played Carnegie Hall for the first time two summers ago, on a second night I thought it'd be nice to spring a surprise. And I came out and sang here's a song I wrote with Paul McCartney 20 years ago that nobody's ever heard. And it's a good song too, just never got round to being recorded. You know, they don't all have to come out.
Talk about having extensive repertoire. I once drove from here to Adelaide only listening to Almost Blue.
Yeah.
Don't drive to Adelaide, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
By all means, listen. I loved Almost Blue.
Yeah.
And you
Adelaide, you're not so keen.
No, the drive to Adelaide's not nothing to write home about. You anticipated a negative reaction to doing country, a bit like Dylan turning electric. Yeah. Did you get it?
Well, I think people were a bit perplexed. I mean, we'd come out of a very different type of music, but I'd always, you know, my invitation to be in Nashville in the first place came in 1978 when a song of mine was picked up by Columbia, and I was invited to sing with George Jones. So I'd already been to Nashville and sung on a duet with one of the, you know, real top people there. And I'd always loved that music. I'd sort of hidden that from any passing journalists back at the beginning of my career, because there were certain things that you just didn't let on about because you had to keep your story simple. And then obviously after 4 or 5 records, then you could start to, you know, celebrate the things that you liked. And at that moment, that was what I wanted. That was the sort of song I wanted to sing. And I couldn't write them as well as those songs that I chose. And I listen to it now, it was a little bit like dressing up in your dad's clothes. Some of the songs were a bit older than I actually was then. But though I've come to love singing some of them in time, you know, and probably found my way into them a bit more. Not all of them. I wouldn't sing all of them today, but some of them I still sing, you know. Of course, I didn't write anything on that album, and then it gave me a little breathing space to then write a good, strong album that came following that. Imperial Bedroom.
We're talking about your book, Unfaithful Music. I should get the full title, but I wanted to ask, any person, no matter how successful they are, had one stroke of luck. What was your stroke of luck? Right place, right time, bumping into someone, or no luck at all?
I think I don't know that I had any thanks on my first record. I think it might have actually said thanks to no one, or no thanks to anyone, or maybe we just talked about putting that on there. But I think really a bunch of coincidences have really led me all the way along the line. You know, I already knew Nick Lowe. You know, from 1972 when I was 17, I bought him a drink in a bar opposite the Cavern, because he was playing there with his old group. So when Stiff Records opened up, and that was my first record label, and he was their first artist and their producer, I knew how to knock on the door. I didn't know that they were going to see anything in my songs. And initially they thought I was just a songwriter for other people. So the stroke of luck was perhaps when they got me behind a microphone.
You've talked about
Something was heard that was worth hearing, and then literally one thing leads to another after that first introduction.
Elvis Costello, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.